This is the Plagmanrules Podcast. Everybody, welcome. It's Monday, October 23rd. And for today's edition of the podcast, really, we're just going to talk about the weekend box office here. We've got quite a bit going on, so I know that's going to take up a little bit of time. And I have seen a few movies lately. I actually saw the Meyerowitz stories on Netflix last night, and I really enjoyed it. I haven't written up an official review for that, so that's something I can probably get to later. Also, I saw Battle of the Sexes and Victoria and Abdul a while ago. Haven't, again, written up any reviews for those, but I'd like to get to those sometime soon here. We're just going to take a look at the weekend box office. Okay, so coming in first place, I don't think this is too much of a surprise. Boo 2, A Madea Halloween. This is basically, it's the sequel to last year's Madea Halloween movie. And when we compare it to the first film, which made $28 million, I think, when it opened last year, which crushed expectations. Some expectations were as low, I remember, as like 11 or 12 million for that movie, and it more than doubled those. So with this one, we kind of knew what we were getting in for this time. And despite, having some of the worst critical reviews of the year, which actually a lot of other movies this weekend that opened up share that as well. With this one, we do see that 21.6 million is the opening here. And like I said last week, you can never question Tyler Perry's power at the box office. This guy, no matter what the critics say about him, he's got a very loyal fan base here. And I definitely think the Madea character is one of the longest running, most successful comic series, if you can call it a series, that we've seen in years. I mean, years and years. And that's a question. I'm not huge into these movies. I don't think I've even sat through one all the way through. But it's like each and every movie, and I guess they're not a running series. It's not like they're all connected by any means. At least I don't think so. But still, it's a character that has become very beloved by the fan base. So it's no surprise that, it's going to make money like this. In second place, Geostorm. Now, I'll tell you what, these Gerard Butler movies, I have no taste for them. So Geostorm, I didn't have high expectations for. Just the previews for it made it look like it was 20 years too late anyways. And even still, it opened to 13.3 million here in the States. Which, for this kind of movie, at this time of year and stuff, and with a production budget of $120 million, that sounds terrible. But we have to remember, too, that a lot of other disaster movies, like more recently we had 2012, that one made actually a good chunk of change here in the States. I think it was about 180 million, but it made close to, I think it was over $500 million worldwide, because outside of the US, disaster movies tend to do very well. I don't know if it's just the foreign market. They love seeing Americana being destroyed, maybe. I don't know. But this one did very well outside the United States, and its gross up to this point has been just shy of $63 million. Now, if it continues on that pace and the foreign money keeps rolling in, then actually Geostorm might actually be a little profitable for Warner Brothers here. And they need that coming off of Blade Runner 2049. We're going to get to that one here in just a second. Okay, so then we had a couple other things to talk about here. Let's get to the new releases first. Only the Brave. This is one I saw it early, and it's one of the best films of the year. It's a shame that it opened this low, $6 million in fifth place. It's too bad. This is a movie that I think should be seen by a lot more people, but I was correct in my prediction on Monday of last week, where I said that the Rotten Tomatoes audience score was going to be anywhere between 90 and 95%. It's at 94. So I nailed that. So that suggests to me at least, and most of those movies that do get up in that range, a lot of those are either religious films or like big blockbusters like Dark Knight and stuff like that. So if you're the religious kind of movies, those tend to do okay in their second, third, and fourth weekends and so on. And some of the blockbusters that get that high tend to do well too. So with this one, hopefully we can see Sony do very well here and actually hold on to most of its audience here for the next few weeks. And they're only putting it in right now a little over 2,500 theaters. Maybe if they boost that up a little bit here in the coming weeks and kind of catch some of the runoff of some of these other blockbusters coming up in the next month, maybe they can actually make a decent profit here. All right, in eighth place, we had The Snowman. This is the new Michael Fassbender thriller, I guess. I know a lot of critics totally dumped on it. $3.4 million for its opening. This is not good. With Fassbender, you had Rebecca Ferguson, J.K. Simmons, a lot of very talented actors in the movie. To see it open this low, and another thing you have to consider too, Universal is only putting this in about 1,800 theaters this weekend. So evidently they knew that it wasn't going to go well, because I think the original predictions were saying 2,500 theaters, and then they realized, oh, everybody hates this movie. And also we've gotten, and I was going to talk about this last time, but we didn't have time for it, but basically the director of the movie has come out and said that the studio is really to blame for the quality here, because evidently his excuse, I can't remember the director's name right now, but his excuse for why the movie is not getting great reviews is because the studio pushed them along too fast. They had to cut like 10 to 15% of the script, and they weren't able to film it, so they had to kind of, in editing, piece everything together when you're missing a good chunk of your movie. I don't know what excuse you have there, but think of a better one. You're the director. You're in charge of stuff here. Yeah, the studio gives you the money, but they're not the ones telling the actors what to do. They're not the ones saying, hey, we need to cut this out. Well, most of the time they're not. That's on the director, the editor, and more of the production staff there. That's on you guys. You need to figure that shit out if you're going to make a good movie. And evidently he, whoever this director was either not trying to make a good movie, which, would surprise me, or he just didn't know how to handle that kind of stuff. So that's basically all I wanted to say on that is, we get a lot of comments today about how, the director should be left alone. Well, if you leave this director alone, I don't know what the result's going to be. Evidently, some directors, when they're left on their own, all of a sudden want to turn on the studios too. Alright, and finally down in 12th place, the last new wide release this weekend was the new faith-based film, Same Kind of Different as Me. Now this one, I didn't have an interest in seeing, and personally, I don't know if a whole lot of non-faith-based audiences wanted to see it either, but it made $2.5 million. That was on 1,300 screens, so it's a lot of these movies just don't do well. Okay, so a couple more to mention here that are in the wide release, then there's a couple of limited release films we'll talk about as well. But Happy Death Day, surprisingly for me, bumped down into 3rd place this weekend. I had it predicted for 2nd place. But despite adding almost 150 theaters, dropped down 64% its 2nd weekend for another $9.3 million. Now, despite a lot of horror movies recently like It, which continues to drop less than 50% pretty much every weekend since week 1, and we've had a couple other recent examples like Get Out, that one consistently held its audience very well, or Don't Breathe, Lights Out, a couple of those did very well. Those are exceptions. Most of the time these horror films actually do this, what Happy Death Day did. They open really well, which Happy Death Day did, $26 million last weekend, and a lot of the teen audiences and kind of the main core audience for these kind of movies, they go out opening weekend and they say, that was okay, or it gave me a couple chills and a couple thrills. And then they might mention it on social media or something, and that's it. And then it's really just anybody else who didn't catch it opening weekend goes out and sees it over the next few weeks, and then it's done. And most of the time, yes, that does result in 60% plus drops. And that was the case this time. Alright, the last thing we'll talk about here as far as the major wide releases in the top portion of the box office this weekend, Blade Runner 2049 this weekend fell another 53% by the estimates here for another $7.1 million in its 3rd weekend, and that brings its domestic haul a little bit shy of $75 million, and when we look at the worldwide total, it has yet to crack $200 million. It's around 194 right now. Now, I've seen this many, many times before, and it's something I think that the movie-going people and the internet people really need to work on. When a movie comes out like this, which has very high critical ratings, very high audience ratings, doesn't matter how much money it makes, they always want to call it a success. They don't care what the production budget was, they don't care all that stuff. If it's good, they're considering it a success, and that's it, and they'll block out anybody who says, but it costs this much. You're like, no, you're wrong, and then they'll go off and go on a tangent or something. That's just not the case here, guys. This film cost reportedly anywhere between $150 to $175. I've even heard now $185 million to make. Now, I know the simple math right here says, if it only costs $185 and it's made $194, it's made money. No, it hasn't. No. Let's look a little deeper into this, folks. So you have to remember, first of all, that 185, let's just say that number, 185 million, yes, that's their production budget. That's when they're on the set, making everything in the movie and also all the post-production stuff when they're doing all their special effects work and all the editing. Also, and we should say also the screenplay. You have to hire a couple people to write the script. You have to hire the director and all that stuff that happens before the cameras roll. Yep, you have to get all that stuff out of the way. And when you add all that up, that's where you get your budget of $185 million in this case. However, when you release a movie, you don't just put it out. You have to put a lot of money into posters, TV spots, trailers, all the prints, everything you have to do to make the movie accessible to everybody. And that costs money too. Some movies have marketing costs that are higher than their production budget. For example, Happy Death Day, that only cost $4.8 million for all the actual movie making stuff. But as far as the marketing and all that stuff, oh, I'm sure that had to be more than triple that. We're probably talking with Happy Death Day, this is just an estimate by my range here, but let's say like $25 or $30 million on marketing there for all the TV spots, all the trailers, releasing the movie and all the prints and stuff. Okay, so yeah, let's say, and again, we've just heard this from a few sources, but I think the marketing cost on Blade Runner 2049 was approximately $175 million. Okay, and that's with all of, again, all the marketing, all the posters, all the TV spots, all the trailers, etc., etc. You get what I mean. And that's not from me, that's from other people that have said that. So when you add all that up, that's $360 million. And that's the costs of all of the production stuff, plus all the marketing that comes after you're done making the movie or while you're making it and all the other trailers and stuff are coming out. Okay, so yes, that means with 194, you haven't broken even, smartass. Okay, and then add on to that, you have Harrison Ford and Ryan Gosling in this movie, both of which, even though Harrison's been around a while, he is a very, very high in demand actor. And he also gets very good deals on the back end. If you're confused on that, that means that after the movie comes out, that he's going to get some of the profits of the movie. Some actors get as high as 15% of what the movie makes. You know, and each actor's different. Every movie deal's different. I think you have some actors who maybe only earn 1% or less than that. And some actors don't even earn money from it, but they earn points. And, you know, we could go into that, but that takes a lot longer to explain how the point system works. And I don't even know every last chunk of it myself. But let's just say between Ryan Gosling and Harrison Ford and all them, let's say that 10% of the profits that you're making off of this movie go to them. So if you do that, you're subtracting approximately $20 million from its total. So add that $20 million on to your other costs. So that brings it up to $380 million. Now, I've been saying here for a couple weeks that the number they have to hit, the magic number to break even after all the marketing costs, after all the back end deals, and after the production budget was anywhere between $400 to $500 million. I've heard 425, I've heard 450, I've heard as high as 500, but then again, I've also heard as low as 300 million, but I guess these are from people who really like the movie and who want to throw out the lowest number possible in order for this movie to be looked at as a financial success. But that's just not the way it works, folks. You get $380 million, that's when you break even. Everything else after that becomes instant profit for the studio. So yeah, basically that's what I'm getting down to here, is that even though the movie, yeah, sure, is critically one of the best reviewed films of the year, there are some people out there saying it's going to be an Oscar contender for a lot of different categories, and it could be, but they'll find every excuse in the book and they'll deny any of the numbers, they'll deny anything I'm saying, just to say it's a film that is actually making profit. And these people just need to take that in consideration. Just because it's a movie you like, it doesn't mean that it made all the money in the world. And that's definitely something to consider. And then on the opposite side of things, we have something like The Mummy, which came out earlier this summer, of course, and was one of the worst reviewed films of the summer. And for me personally, yeah, I do think it's one of the worst films I've seen all year. Now, we had that one, which made $400 million, a little over that worldwide, and the production budget was between $125 million and $195 million. Now, here's the thing that's kind of interesting for me. That $195 million I've only heard from one source. Everybody else says $125. And I see that 195 was added more than a month after the movie came out. Now, maybe, yeah, that one source just heard about it late or something, I don't know. But that's kind of suspect to me. That tells me that's somebody who says, oh, well, the movie is actually making money if it only costs 125. Let's say it costs more. And that's, I think it's on Wikipedia. That's where I'm finding that. that's a case where, yeah, it's not good enough for some movie fans online to say, hey, that it was a bad movie. Let's also say it lost money, too. No, that's the thing, is you get all these people who are very biased, who are very, very biased, and will do everything in their power to say that a movie that even by most estimates made money actually did not, and they'll flip the numbers around or something. That's total bull crap, and I don't think that that should be done. At the same time, I'm sure we'll get it in a few weeks here from some really stupid people, but they'll say, oh, actually the production budget of Blade Runner was only 75 million, or they'll drop it so drastically to where finally the numbers come out to where they make money. And one more thing too, I'm not saying this because I have anything against Blade Runner, by any means. No, I have not seen the movie yet, and I have not seen the original, so my plan is I'll just see them both back to back on Blu-ray or something in a few months when they come out. So, yeah, and again, it's all these people who are so biased and who just, it's not enough for them that their movie didn't make money and one movie they didn't like did. No, 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 they got to go and do all stuff like that. My bottom line here is that a lot of these internet people come up with all this stuff. They need to grow up and just accept the facts. Just accept that a movie that you like didn't make money. So what? That's not the end of the world. It's not like somebody's coming into your house and taking money out of your wallet, and they make it up to be something that sounds like it's the end of the world, and personally, I'm just sick of it. Alright, I knew I was going to get all drowned out and all that, and that was going to take forever, so that's kind of why I wanted to not spend as much time on other topics today. So, that's all that's going on there in the wide release films. Now, if we look at some of the limited release films here, we have The Florida Project continuing to make good money in its limited release. It's up to 112 theaters right now, making in a little over $630,000 for a total now of a little over 1.3 million, which is doing very well. I'm sure that one will continue to expand. We also had a couple of new releases out in limited runs here. We had The Killing of a Sacred Deer, which is a new film from A24. In 4 theaters, it got a little over $114,000 for a per theater average of $28.6 thousand. That's very good, especially for a film which critics are kind of split on. Well, not really split. 75% on Rotten Tomatoes, so some people really like it and some people just despise it. So that's pretty good for kind of a quirky little movie like that. And then we also had Wonderstruck, the new film from Todd Haynes. That one earned $68,000 in 4 theaters. The per theater average there, a little over $17,000. So not bad for a couple of these limited starts. And there was actually one from last weekend that I missed, and that's the new Andrew Garfield film, Breathe, where I believe he plays a polio patient back in the, I think it's the 20s or the 30s, I don't know. But anyways, I missed it last weekend. It only opened in 4 theaters for $22,000, a little over that, so the per theater average was only $5,500. Oof. Even for a movie opening that low with potential Oscar buzz to it, that's a terrible start. And it expanded into 315 theaters this weekend. Get this, it earned $155,000, a little over that. So the per theater average was less than $500. You know, I would have thought, because I've seen it actually advertised a lot in a lot of screenings I've been in lately, it's not going to make it. It's not going to make it if it's only making this much. If it expands to, say, 750 theaters next weekend, the gross is probably going to be less than $300,000. And for those 750 theaters, that's losing money. That's losing business for your theater. So they're not going to risk it if it's 750 theaters. That's a disaster waiting to happen. So this one, I don't know what they're going to do with it. It's Bleecker Street is the distributor here. They're just going to have to say, oh, well, we tried, because the interest isn't there. Alright, so thanks everybody for bearing with me there on that kind of long explanation as far as all that stuff. And consider that too the next time you hear somebody saying, oh, this movie made so much money. Remember that it's more than just the production budget that we have to consider as far as whether a movie is breaking even or losing money. Just so we know. And I know there's a lot of people who already know that, who listen to the podcast, but still, for everybody who's new to that kind of stuff or has never heard some of those terms before, hopefully, yeah, that clears it up for you a little bit. Alright, so yeah, we'll be back again on Friday talking about whatever happens in movie news this week. We'll get into it once it happens. And also, one thing I'm looking forward to here is we've got Halloween coming up. It's actually a little over a week away. But a while ago, I sat down and kind of had this idea because, for me personally, I am a gigantic fan of the Friday the 13th franchise, and it's been a while since we've seen an entry in the franchise. I did have an idea a couple years ago, actually after The Force Awakens came out. I picked up a couple things while watching The Force Awakens, and I was like, okay, yeah, so obviously the story is basically a best of the original trilogy. And they have all these callbacks and all these new characters and different characters and everything. And I said, okay, so this formula you've got here, this could apply to just about any franchise, and for whatever reason, Friday the 13th came to mind. So I kind of came up with a little idea, and I kind of started writing some stuff down, and all of a sudden I realized I kind of have a pitch here for if you wanted to do a special new movie in the Friday the 13th franchise, because don't forget, they've made 12 movies, including the remake up till now. So that means the next one that they make, if they ever make it, is going to be number 13. Now, for a movie that happens to be titled Friday the 13th, that's a special occasion. That's something that's only going to come once, and you're never going to get that opportunity again. That means you have one chance, and one chance only, to make this 13th movie in the Friday the 13th franchise. You get what I mean here. You get one chance to do a movie that's actually worth a damn and that's going to bring fans of this franchise back who have been gone for a long, long time. So I kind of came up with an idea. And again, this is a couple years ago, so it's not entirely fresh, and I'm sure some other people have also had similar thoughts before. But if you did a Force Awakens style film set in the Friday the 13th universe, so that means you bring back a lot of the surviving characters throughout the franchise. So, like, that means you bring Tommy Jarvis back. You bring Jenny Field back from the second one. You bring Tina Shepard from Part 7 back, the one with telekinesis. You could even have a cameo from the original surviving gal, Alice, from the first film. She could be a ghost or something. So I was like, okay, I'm starting to put an idea in my head to where, hey, if it's been 40 years after the first film, which, if you remember from the series, 1979 is the starting point for the first film. It's not actually 1980, which was when the movie came out. Basically, you could do something where 40 years later, Crystal Lake is kind of now a community where they make fun of Jason. They're like, yeah, these murders happened, but we don't believe in Jason and all that. And you can have all these people come back to the town and who are like, no, Jason's real. And, it's all these past victims who come together and say, no, Jason's real. We need to take this seriously and all this stuff. And, I just kind of came up with a pitch idea of, hey, what would a new movie that was in the Friday the 13th franchise, but also had the Force Awakens kind of vibe to it, to where it's, hey, we're doing a best of kind of thing. What would that look like? What would the characters be doing there? So I kind of put together a little pitch there, and I want to share that with everybody. So I'm going to do that closer to Halloween. So we've got a little over a week now before Halloween, so I'll get back to that later. But basically, I wanted to share my ideas on that, just kind of as a fun video, and just something I know it'll never happen, but it's just an idea that I had that I thought, hey, there's fans of the Friday the 13th franchise out there still, and I know they're dying to see something new with the franchise. So what if we did kind of like to celebrate the franchise with the 13th film and all that? And plus, if it comes out here, let's say by 2019, that's close to the 40th anniversary of the first film and the whole start of the franchise. So that was something, I'll put that together later here, but that's just something I wanted to share and kind of preview a little bit. So yeah, we'll get to that sometime closer to Halloween. All right, so yep, we'll be back again on Friday for the newest edition of the Plagmanrules Podcast, right? Until then, this has been the Plagmanrules Podcast.